Welcome to Empirical Pre-Pod.
All right, now I'm going to make as many uncomfortable, awkward puns as possible
Okay.
during this recording.
I love that.
It'll make sense as people learn more about what you do. But my first one I'm going to start with is, if memory serves me correct, you were born in the bayou, right?
I was born in the bayou. Yep. I'm from New Orleans, right outside New Orleans.
Did you live down there, or were you just born down there?
No, I lived there till I was about 19. And then I met my husband when I was 18 in Cancun, Mexico. And he was from here, Chicago, where I live now. And a year later, I moved up here to be with him.
You guys have been together that long?
24 years.
That's too long.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I guess I should back up. This is going to be like talking to somebody with extreme ADD that's constantly moving around and getting off track. We're sitting down and talking with my friend Jenna Allin today. That's it. Now I just want to jump back in. So you guys met in Cancun?
We did. We met in Cancun, Mexico. We were each on Christmas vacation with our families. And I had actually gone to this club to like meet another guy who didn't show up. And I was there by myself. And so then I met my husband and we had an amazing week in Cancun together.
It seems like a movie. Like
It
literally.
was.
Like, I went to meet some guy. He stood me up. Oh, enter new guy.
Oh, it was. There were so many scenes where I was like, what is this reality? We were like making out under this like bridge in the pool. And I was like, I'm in Romeo and Juliet. Cause that's like about the time that movie had come out. And I was like, oh my God. And then we were like rolling in the waves, making out where they were splashing up. And I was like, I'm in a Mariah Carey video. We had this like time where we were like on buses trying to meet up and we were like passing each other. And I was like, this is like when Harry met Sally or something. Like, yeah, it was out of rom-com from the 90s for sure.
That's crazy. So before that, you grew up down in Louisiana. What was it like growing up in Louisiana? Like it's got to be such a culture shock to leave that after almost 20 years and come to the boringest, well, not the boringest state, but one of the boringest states.
Yeah, living in the Midwest is definitely way more boring than living in New Orleans. But I was happy to get out because at that time I was like into it. The culture is just like for teens at least, and the culture, there's a lot of drugs and for everyone, lots of alcohol and just overconsumption of all things. And that was not a good environment for me. And yeah, I felt like my husband was like this knight in shining armor, kind of like taking me away from the things that were self-harming when I was there.
Did you feel that? Like, I mean, even because I know that you guys you have a family now, so like you know what it's like to deal with the school districts up here, and the whole your life is up here now for a long time. It had to be so different because it's kind of it's literally known as the Big Easy, right? Like you just said, drugs, alcohol, and everything. It had to be hard to like. Do you remember kind of when you noticed that? Because obviously, when you're a kid, you don't know that. But at some point, like, is it elementary school? Is it junior high? Or is it all the way to high school? We're like, oh, this stuff is readily available for anybody.
Yeah, it was probably high school, probably when I got into doing a lot of like hardcore drugs. I realized how easy it was to just have access to that and and how hard it was to not and to stay out of that and to make friends who weren't in that community, because it's very rare and hard to find.
You feel pushed that way? Like, you grew up in a toxic environment?
Well, I grew up with a lot of trauma very early on, and my adopted dad was an angel and kind of protected me in a lot of ways that I'm really, really, really grateful for, and was able to remove me from, very toxic situation. That could have been much worse. So growing up, I knew the toxic and I knew the trauma and I knew all of that. And then was able to, because of him, like get a taste of the other side of things and what a healthier life looked like and felt like. But still, when I was a teenager, it was still really, it's like that's when I think a lot of our unconscious stuff from really early on
Right.
is like playing out. And so we had like a tumultuous relationship somewhat. And yeah, I was very much into drugs, a lot of promiscuity because of the trauma that I had experienced very early on. Yeah.
Were you adopted?
Well, my mom met my adopted dad when I was a baby, and then they got married. He adopted me, and they
Okay.
divorced, and I stayed with him, and he raised me.
So you didn't. So after they divorced, your mom was out of the picture. I
Yeah.
presume that's where some of this stuff comes from. Like,
Yeah,
we're dancing around.
yeah. Yeah, she had moved away, and we didn't have a very close relationship, but she moved away out of like protection. She wasn't mentally stable at that time and knew that, her presence could have contributed to, things not being as good as they were. And I really
Yeah.
think that she did that out of protection, which I didn't understand at the time and just
Right.
felt abandoned. And yeah.
I mean, even now looking back, I feel like that's a double-edged sword, right? Like that's awesome to be able to recognize that and pull yourself out of that situation, but at the exact same time, being the person that kind of has to suffer from that or lose out on that. If you can even recognize that, why can't you just do something about it? You're right
Right.
there. You're so
Yeah.
close.
Yeah. And I think that back then, therapy wasn't what it was today. It wasn't as accepted as it is today. There weren't, I think now today there'd be like nervous system regulation techniques and different things that would have fit more, I think, with her at that time. And, she tried what she could and did what she could, I think. And, it's
Yeah.
just, it was a different day and time. I think now, if it were to be in this current climate of how popular therapy is and how accepted that is, and certain diagnoses are, I think that, maybe there would have been something different that could have happened. But I do think it was the best decision she could have made. I really do.
Do you guys have a relationship now or
Yeah.
eventually?
Oh yeah. We are very, very close now. We text almost every day. We talk all the
Nice.
time.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice that we're like. I feel like we've been in the infancy of these things being accepted, and not only accepted, but like looked for,
Mhm.
and like really be like, oh, there's a lot of value to this. Like it's been cool to kind of grow with. I feel like you and I are similar. We've kind of grown with that over like the last 15 years, 20 years. Do you think I kind of want to? I know you're pressed for time, and people always complain that the show's too long, anyways. So I want to skim over some things. And do you think that drove you to psychology in general and kind of
Oh, yeah.
looking for that?
Yeah, definitely for sure. I'm currently getting my PhD in clinical psychology. And when I was about 12, I had already like experienced the mental illness of my mom, but didn't know that that was mental illness. Like
Mm,
it wasn't labeled as such at that
right.
time, but I had definitely experienced that, which for her just came from lots of trauma. And she no longer struggles with many of the things she used to. And also witnessed severe mental illness in my younger sister and the struggles that my parents had. She had severe ADHD and some other things going on that I think were like more than that. Possibly even today, she might get diagnosed as like on the spectrum of autism or something. It was it very much consumed my parents' life, was like dealing with mental illness. And at 12, I had a friend who had a borderline personality disorder, and she was a cutter. She was like cutting herself in the bathroom, and she was going in and out of hospitals. And I would visit her actually at a mental hospital that was nearby when she would go in and out of the hospital. And I remember, this is making me emotional. I remember leaving there one time and I just told my dad in the car, like, I want to be a therapist. I want to help these kids. And I want to, at that time it was helping teens and helping kids who needed it. Yeah.
I think that's what we initially bonded over because that's still, even to this day, is what I'm like. I don't know if you still, now that we're older, I still look at like junior high and high school age kids and I'm like, if I could, that's where I'd want to talk to them because that's where it's starting, right? Like
Mhm.
that's where it's definitely gonna. The path is laid in front of them. There, which way are they gonna go? Like they need the most, and that's the adults are the most assholes to those aged kids.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely have the hardest time. And I think that they're at a time where they're triggering things in their parents, and their parents don't know how to deal with like their own childhood stuff being triggered by their children, and they don't realize how to like work through that. And to answer your question though, yeah, I do oftentimes think about working with kids. It's not like my top priority right now. I'm launching a mystery school. I've kind of like taken my psychology and gone in a different direction with it a little bit, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I often think like there are kids out there who are struggling, who don't know that they have intuitive abilities and don't know that they have psychic abilities, and would they have a place to teach them how to channel that, or their parents have a
Right.
place to teach them how to deal with that and cope with that. I think that we'd have a lot less mental illness, and we'd have a
Yeah.
lot less, friction in the homes.
I think one of those things too, a big piece of that is a lot of what creates anxiety or like kind of that stagnant that comes with those things is those abilities presenting themselves and you not knowing kind of how to deal with them or how to channel them,
Yeah.
things like that. So it just becomes this tying of your guts instead.
Yeah, definitely. There's like not enough education just in general on like how do I listen to my body and what it's saying to me? Like what's that gut wrenching feeling? What's that, right? Just that basic knowledge. And then there's absolutely no education on like, okay, what if that's like a psychic ability? I remember as a kid I saw ghosts a lot and like was terrified. I couldn't even sleep by myself. My dad would get so frustrated because I'd wake up in the middle of the night like screaming for him, and had people known that like, oh, she's actually maybe experiencing something, let's teach her how to manage this. And
Right.
I remember going to like a psychic class in the early 2000s, and somebody said, oh, you just turn it off like this and you just do this, and it was so easy. And after that, I could control when I saw ghosts or not, and like could turn it off and be like, I don't want that. And like had somebody told me how easy that was,
Yeah.
as a kid, that would have,
That's awesome.
yeah, made a big difference, I think. Yeah.
So when it's funny to me right now because unbeknownst to you, actually, most people that listen to this show already know who you are because I talk about you often. You come up often, I should say, because of what I'm doing now and because we met initially through, I think the first time we met was your 7 steps to manifest your life now. Did that a couple of times. We became close from that, and we kind of, and I just, instead even not even taking it, I was helping you like hand stuff out and get people organized, taking money, like just take the money. But after that, something I still always reference is that I used to do trauma and that was a program that you had put together.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now was that before you had started the journey? I know you've been working on your PhD for a while, but were you already taking psychology courses then? Because one of the things I admire about you is that you've got your hands in a lot of stuff, kind of like me surrounding this thing, but
Mhm.
not necessarily in this thing.
Yeah. So I don't know that I had started psychology courses yet at that time. I think it was shortly after that I went back to school for my bachelor's in psychology, and only recently have I started, I've been in school for my PhD for a minute. I'm taking it really slowly. I'm like taking classes every other semester and stuff
Yeah,
just to take care of my health and stuff. But
smart.
what
It's a lot.
Yes, it is. So what happened was in starting my bachelor's when I moved here, there was something that happened with my financial aid that didn't go through. And then I was like, everybody with psychology degrees, like they're just like, still waiting tables or whatever. So like, what's the point? And I knew at that point I wasn't going to go all the way through to, master's or doctorate. So it wasn't worth it. So I pulled back from that. And then I found hypnosis. And I tried getting into that for a minute, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for. And then when I started developing symptoms of like immune disorder and chronic illness that wasn't resolvable through Western medicine, somebody referred me to a trauma recovery hypnotherapist, and their work was just mind blowing. And so then I took that course that they had trained in, started practicing, and almost immediately, though, like changed it up and made it my own and created my own program. And I started training other therapists and hypnotherapists and healers and practitioners in trauma recovery hypnotherapy. And I did that for years. Yeah.
Yeah, even doing I was shocked when I started doing my certification because right now I'm doing one for hypnotherapy and I've already got my life coaching one. But the parallels were insane to me. Where when I started, I was like, oh, I've already done this. It's so like it's definitely got your spin on it and it's different. Like we're definitely distinctive things. but there's also a lot of overlap there too, where I'm like, okay, this is a lot more of a refresher course than I realized it was going to be. Because I was like afraid to just do it because it's not regulated. You can just do it.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, I want to be formally taught. And
Mhm.
then when I did, I was like, oh, okay, I already.
Yeah, you're like, I'm already trained in this. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I had taken like the curriculum from the hypnotherapy training certification and like just taught that alongside some of the trauma recovery stuff and some of this other stuff that I was like pulling in from different learnings and psychology and different trainings that I had been doing.
Do you still do that proper, or do you just kind of use those pieces as they come up in what you're doing now?
Yeah, I just use them as they come up. Almost all of my one-on-one clients will experience the trauma recovery
Yeah.
hypnotherapy method, but
Whether they know it or
um,
not. Right.
yeah, they don't know that that's what's
Yeah.
going on. And like, it's just like, hey, let's pause here. Let's tune into what this is. Let's deepen into it. It's less hypnotherapy than it is
Yeah.
just like using some of those guided, same tools, same language, all of that stuff. But
You still put
yeah,
on your hypnotherapist voice. You're like, all right, let's everybody calm down.
I definitely use that a lot. I definitely it helps to actually start sessions, like no matter what I'm doing or teaching, or even if I'm like on a live video on Facebook or something, I will often be like, let's ground in because that helps me be less
Yeah.
nervous. Like,
It is critical. It's funny to me because it's just a funny thing, but it is critical to do that. To check in
Mhm.
with the people, to ground yourself. I think it's also an important part of setting those boundaries because it's real easy in this line of work to carry stuff with you.
Yeah.
And so you've got to kind of have that letting people be what you need them to be, but also not just backpacking it and taking it with you. Right? I
Yeah.
feel like not enough people talk about that. We're like, all right, what are you doing to make sure you're not burdening this from here on out?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot that goes into that. I think nowadays, like the biggest things are the most beneficial things for that are nervous system regulation and making sure you're doing that regularly. And for
Yeah.
me, that's like breath work and Kundalini practice. That's intimacy and sex practices. That's like I do like a grief dance class every Friday that I actually just did right before our call. And like just moving the energy through of what we are picking up. And I think, too, what I've learned since I actually stepped away from trauma recovery and into mystery school world is that the way we're working is really important. And like I was working in an energy of like, gotta get it, striving, surviving, pushing myself and working from a place of burnout a lot. And not only was I like working in trauma and carrying this heavy stuff, I was also like, entrepreneur, gotta do it. Right. And so now everything for me, because of my health and where that got from burnout and from a lot of other things, everything has to be just pleasure oriented and has to be fun. And otherwise, I'm like, all right, I'm dropping everything for a week and I'm going to reassess like where I'm at once I find myself, because I do get back into that like produce and that
Yeah,
burnout
right.
cycle. I
Yeah.
stop, I drop everything. I don't care who I've got on my schedule, what's happening, I drop it all. And then I'm like, okay, let me just take care of me for a week and then I'll reassess like what I need. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. Did you say grief dance?
Yeah, grief dance. And so, we're all experiencing different levels of grief all the time, right? When we're, especially if we're working with people with trauma, like we're hearing their traumas. And that's like, that's a loss for us. That's sad to see that that's going on in the world. It's sad to just know that, right? We're just in grief because, like, look who is in charge of things. Look who is, like, look what's happening over here. Look what's happening,
Right.
right? And males experience a certain type of grief and loss because they're not able to like process their emotions and feelings in certain ways. Women are experiencing grief and loss from oppression, and people of different races are experiencing oppression constantly. So we're always experiencing some level of grief. It's not just bereavement, like somebody died, right? And so I think it's really important to acknowledge this. This grief is stored in our body. It's stored in our energy systems, especially if we're oracles or intuitives or mystics in any way, or we're empaths. We're picking up on that. We're holding it in our bodies, and we don't even realize that it's there. And when you have somebody on the other side of, for me, it's the screen. I don't go to the class, but and when I have somebody there who is like, okay, journal about this, write about that, I'm like, that's on my heart. Like I didn't realize that like that was so big inside of me. And you get to acknowledge some of this stuff that's really huge. And so we journal a little bit, and then we put on some music, and she guides us through. Like today, it was like different elements, like moving as water and air and fire, but like also like moving that grief through the body and letting
Right.
that have a space. And I think that that's really, really important.
Yeah, I think that that's one of those critical things in general of letting things flow. We get really stuck on things, and like that's the whole thing is like not letting things be sticky, because then you become stagnant. Then you start dwelling or obsessing. Like let your thoughts just kind of come and then let them go.
Yeah, a lot of my work centers on pleasure, 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 but it's pleasure. Having pleasure is not about bypassing the grief and the losses and the anger and the rage and the things that really need to be moved through us, and they're meant to move through us, and they are sacred. They're sacred emotions, and they need to be acknowledged. And when they are, then we can manifest easier and better and faster, and we
Right.
can create quantum leaps and shift timelines and be magical beings because it's moved
Yeah.
through us.
Oh, so we could spend hours on already of what we've already talked about,
Yeah.
but I do want to move swiftly into what you're doing now, because this is, I've always seen it from the outside looking in, and even some of those parts I'm not allowed to see anymore as of yesterday.
I booted you from the group.
Nothing like being invited and then be like, on second thought, fuck yourself. But I find it fascinating. I want to let people know that there could be a potential trigger warning, because we're going to talk about some things and we're going to talk about it freely. I would say to let yourself be uncomfortable. You might learn something.
Yeah.
But what are you doing now?
What am I doing now? Well, first I want to let people know that I didn't just boot you from the group. I booted all the men from my group because I wanted to have more sensual freedom in there. And I did suspect that there were a couple men in there that were not I don't know, didn't have the right orientation in the groups.
It ruins it for me to say out loud, but I consider myself a pretty feminine ally.
Yes, yeah. It hurt me to like, there was like you and like four other guys and my husband too in there that I was like, "Ah, but I don't want to remove them." Like it just, yeah, I didn't want to, but I just needed it to be a safer space. So what was the question again? I'm sorry. Oh, how did I come to do what I'm doing now, or what am I doing
Yeah,
now?
what are you doing, and what is it?
Yeah. So, what is it? So, I am launching a mystery school. It is called the Pleasure Temple. And a mystery school is a training ground for typically priestesses and oracles. It's really like just people who have intuitive abilities and want to use those better and use them more and learn how to use them, learn what they are, or find them. Maybe somebody is like, I want to have intuitive abilities, right? And so that's the basis of a mystery school. My mystery school is pleasure focused. So it's focused on orienting to sensual, which is sexual or non sexual pleasure, and erotic, tantric based pleasure and practices. Tantra is not just sex. That's actually like this much of the
Right.
whole thing. Like
Sure.
Tantra is like philosophy
Yeah.
and has a lot more to it. And so it's based in tantric philosophy. And in it, one of the first things we do is learn how to meditate in a fun way that's pleasurable and learn how to regulate our nervous system. And we use breath work. And so we learn how to get grounded into the body. It's none of the practices I teach, or nothing is about like transcending the body. There's nothing about that. I think that can be unhealthy escapism. And so it's all about how to orient toward whatever's happening for us, all of the joy and pleasure and grief and loss and all of those things, and how to let them all move through us so that then we can be an open channel for divine, for the intuition, for our healing gifts to make their way through. And I have a very sexual spin on a lot of things that are kind of like optional and available throughout the program.
So are those part of the prep? Because you mentioned earlier too, when you were younger, you were promiscuous, and you've always been a sexual being. Like everybody's a sexual being, but you lean into that more than most people probably do. Is that something personal that you've kind of put on that, or is that kind of just the way it's supposed to be?
Definitely personal. It definitely comes from having sexual trauma very early on. And I think that's why I was so promiscuous as a child and not knowing how to, yeah, deal with that and, move that trauma through. And really, like, I had therapy and I had certain outlets and healthy things, but didn't get to it in the ways that I think that also I was a sexological body worker and didn't know it. And now I have the training and now I can do that professionally and I can support people. But at the time, when I was younger, just didn't even know that that could be a thing, right? That there was a place to channel this energy.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why, like, I want this type of work to be available to young people, because, like, maybe the teenage girls and guys out there who are being really promiscuous, maybe if they knew that there was like a way to channel this into supporting people and learn how to be a sex worker, not in a prostitute type of way, but like,
Right.
here you can help and serve people and learning how to have pleasure. And if we knew that was available to us, maybe we wouldn't have to go down self-sabotaging
Right.
dark paths.
What does that look like though to be? Because I feel like it walks a line that I love, actually, and I think it makes sense to me. But I feel like in a general sense, most people are going to write this off as pornographic. And like, where does that kind of, obviously, if they're not going to give you the time, they're not going to learn. What's the difference there? Like you just said, to be a sex worker but not a prostitute.
So to me, it's like, when you're walking into a more medical type of setting, like you're walking in to go get a massage, that massage therapist is not like sexualizing your body, or hopefully that and feel safe
Right.
enough that that's not the case that's happening for you. And so to me, it's that kind of energy. It's, you're walking into, like, if you and the very good examples of this are on that show called Sex, Love, and Goop, with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah. That was a really good little series.
Really good. Yeah. And so, their hands might be on your body, but they're helping you to like experience pleasure for the first time, or they're helping you to know where your pleasure zones are, it's more of in like a therapeutic setting. It's not that they're getting enjoyment out of it, out of
Sure.
your body. It's not that they're even penetrating you. It's that they're showing you how do things to your own body. And my trainings are all online, and so I'm training people and teaching people and how to find self pleasure and how to find partnered pleasure and how to bring magic into that, and like intention setting and manifestation and things like that.
So I'm gonna say words that are not meant to talk down about what you're doing, but I think, like, as I'm hearing it, I'm trying to process it.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like, to an effect, that it wouldn't be wrong to say that one-on-one with you online would be essentially teaching somebody how to jerk off.
No, yeah, that would definitely not be it. If I was going to I don't work with males, but if I was going to work with a male, it would
Yeah.
be talking about, like, what are your blocks? Like, when you're
Yeah.
with your partner or with yourself, like, what comes up? Maybe like they have fantasies that make them
Right.
uncomfortable, or they have, like, ED, or they
Mhm.
struggle with their partner. And I would talk them through, like, okay,
Right.
what do we do to deal with this? What do we do to de-armor the heart so you can be
Sure.
more intimate with
So
yourself?
this is it's much bigger than, a lot of times even our culture kind of glorifies sex and sexual acts as very transactional, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
just this for this, and here's the outcome that we're all looking for, and that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas which strips all the magic, right?
Yes, yes. And to that point, I will say that there's even, this like shifted my perspective about like prostitution when I heard that, like, sometimes people who are in the army and away for a really long time will come back and hire a prostitute to be with that prostitute because they're going to have a breakdown and they don't want to do that with their partner and put
Right.
that on them. And they would rather go and experience. And that to me is even therapeutic in the prostitute realm, right? In that sex worker realm, right? So, it's a step further from that and more therapeutic in what I'm doing. But, that's something that just changed my whole perspective about like that whole area of professionalism.
Yeah, I've always like, to me, it's always just been a job like any other job. But like, yeah, when you talk about stuff like that, like, it has the potential to be just as important as anything else, as going to a doctor or a therapist. Do you think that with, doing this work, and everything you've done has always kind of been female focused, do you feel like you're like, do you feel like that's almost like you're missing half of an audience that probably needs it more?
Mm. Yeah, you know what? I do. And it's something on my mind a lot. It's interesting because there's a lot of factors that go into like why I'm choosing to work with
Yeah.
who I work with. For me in particular, I have struggled with boundaries around men. I told you I was very promiscuous, and like so there is a part of me that's like, I don't know if I could trust myself in that situation, right? Like, and
Yeah.
so knowing my boundary is very important. Like,
Yeah.
knowing that like I might slip up, right? It's very
Sure.
important. And also, for me, like the vulva and the female body, the vagina, like that's my area of expertise. I've mastered that over here. Like I know what the fuck I'm talking about. I know what I'm
Right.
doing, right?
Yeah.
And also I'm in a monogamous marriage where my partner is not comfortable to that extent with me doing work with the opposite sex. And
Sure.
like that
Sure.
could change as I learn and grow, and maybe that would change a little bit. I have been considering like doing some like co-ed
Yeah.
retreats in person and doing some things like that. That would be very boundaried, very much like my clothes stay on,
Yeah.
and different things like
That's what I
that.
was thinking too, is like couple work would be your step in, right? Like
Mhm.
somebody that is already wanting to get there and has hopefully a healthy relationship already that they're just looking to take to the next level.
Mhm.
So in that vein, then also since you kind of explore this and have this education, what does that look like for your partner? Do you bring that? Like the rest of us might not be able to access that, but surely he can to an extent. Or do you keep that as separate as possible?
No, we definitely use everything that I learn and yeah, bring that in. And I was doing like sex magic in terms of like on the woo woo side of things, like just like I want to manifest some things, and I'd be like writing my intentions, and then I'd like go and be like, "Hey, hon, let's have sex," and then like be imagining my intentions, and then eventually I started telling him about it, and then we
Yeah.
watched the sex, love, and goop thing, and then we like just started like incorporating these practices, and we have like a book called Urban Tantra, and we would be practicing things like that. So it all kind of evolved together, I think, like all at the same time. Yeah.
What does that really mean? That like, so when you wrote down these intentions, and these are intentions in on the sexual plane, or just intentions in life in general,
In life. Yeah. Yeah.
that
Like
you're
manifesting.
kind of you're just using this as another caveat of manifestation.
Yeah. So to me, how I think of it is that when you're having sex, you're opening up or tuning into or plugging into the sacral chakra. And
Mhm.
that is the creative center. That is where babies come in through portals,
Right.
human souls come in through a portal. And that's magic to me. So when you're having sex, you're tapping into that. And when you're having tantric sex, you're really tapping into like the energy and mixing energies together. And so to me, it just made sense as I was working with manifestation for so long that when I got into this sex work, I was like, oh yeah, like or this tantra work with my husband, like it was like, oh yeah, bring in the intentions and like get that in there because I feel like you're opening a portal. And so I just started developing my own little techniques of like, yeah, calling to mind certain imagery or certain affirmations, like at certain points when I can, when the mind is like actually working a little
Right. When you're
bit.
not like, hey, do you mind focusing on me for a
Yeah,
second?
right. Yeah. And we have different times where we're like, okay, we're going to do ceremony, and other times where it's
Right.
not ceremony. So yeah.
Have you ever done, like you talked about meditation too? Have you ever done like a meditation, an intentional meditation with your partner before initiating sex? Like, because I used to read years ago, like some of the best ways to practice meditation is partner based, is in the nude, and like sitting in front of each other and kind of accepting everything and really opening that up right there. Have you guys done stuff like that?
Yeah, we have. And we often will do now our kind of go to, or we've fallen in like a rhythm that now we have, but like most of the time we are nude and we do breath work first. And like, that to me, like really breath work has been like just mind blowing. I think it really opens up our channels, our intuitive channels, our oracular channels, and our channels of manifestation. And so we will often do breath work together, even like do use breath work in the background as we're like interacting. And yeah, it's kind of magical.
Does seem magical. Do you think so? Does it feel any way at all that it takes away any kind of spontaneity?
No, I think that it has enabled me to be more spontaneous because of my sexual trauma. Like it's taken us a while to like get like to where we would set up these ceremonies, and like I'd feel like pressure, I'd feel like, and we had to deal with a lot of that, like, but having that container to always come to was like, okay, there's no pressure, it's optional, it's always optional, come to this, and we'll just come together and we'll set our intentions, and then we'll see what the body wants to do and where the mind's at. And like it used to be like so touch and go, and so like, oh, maybe my body will open up today, and now it's just always. And then what started to happen is that a lot more spontaneous sex started to happen and be more comfortable for me, because we had this like safe container where it was always happening.
Well, now, once it kind of gets established, then you're kind of holding that space, right?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you think that, or rather, with you said mystery, what did you call it? Mystery school, but then there's also the Pleasure Palace.
The Pleasure Temple is a mystery school. Yeah.
Okay, so that's within that thing. Is this like a curriculum that you learned, or something you put together, or?
It's definitely something that I put together. So I've taken all my years of trauma recovery work, and it's still a lot of the same practices and things that I've used with my clients over the years, like figuring out what works for people and how to help them and how to support them, and specifically geared toward people who are like oracles and in oracular business, because that's who I was working with when I was in trauma recovery. I was teaching a bunch of practitioners, and they were all wanting to like work on their trauma around their business. So there's all this like sacred business like aspects to it. But I think I lost my train of thought. What question was I answering?
That it was your own thing that you've put together based on all of these.
Yeah. So I took all of those things, and then I've had, my own practices of like manifestation, journaling, whatever, all of those things, and then took training in sexological body work, and like have created like this. Yeah.
What drove you to the sexological body? Because I'm kind of like thinking of the moment where all of those things, not a U-turn or anything, but like took a sharp turn to be like, okay, in this realm, it makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, that's super magical. So a few years back, I got to the point with my autoimmune disease that like I was getting really, really sick, and I was like I said, burning myself out in my business. And I did a water fast to try and help me. And it was like this supposed to be like a 21-day like water fast. I made it to 16. But in that time period that I was doing this water fast and working with this guy who was doing it for me, who was just amazing, helped me to see like how I was burning myself out doing what I was doing. And I knew I couldn't do that, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I like decided I was going to take off like another month of work. And then after that, I was like, I can't go back. And then after that, I was like, well, what am I going to do? And like every month I was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And then I'd try to do it, and I would stop, and I would try to do it, and I would stop. And then nothing was coming to fruition. And I started to use one of my manifestation techniques that I do. The imagery that I was using was like rooting into my pleasure. Find my pleasure, find what I really desire, root into my pleasure. And so that like when we do imagery, it commands our subconscious mind to somehow create or manifest that thing. And so after rooting into my pleasure, I stumbled upon this woman who was teaching sexological body work. And I was like, this might be like the answer to like what I've always needed to be doing, but just never knew that. And it was. And I immediately knew like, this is it. I'm going to take this and teach people. And it changed my sex life. Like after just one class, it was like, everything was different. And also it had a lot of this, like just in general, orienting to pleasure and nervous system regulation training. And I was like, this is it. This is, I'd spent so many years in my illness, like chasing down all the trauma and being like, I need to heal the thing to get better. I need to heal this. I need to be better. But this changed everything. And I went from like not being able to work and being so burnt out to actually like being able to function again and I'm not any less sick now than I was 3 years ago when I took the water fast. Like I'm not, but I'm way more functional now because I've learned how to orient to pleasure. I've learned how to prioritize pleasure and make it first. I've learned how to have a deeper, intimate relationship with my husband. So everything in my life always ways that has worked for me, I've always brought it to other people immediately.
How do you put pleasure first? Like, what does that look like on a not even with your husband, but just in a personal space? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, like in business, for example, like if I am scheduling something or doing something and I'm having anxiety, or if I'm having a hard time with it, I'm like, nope, taking it off the plate. It's just off the plate now. Like, and we experienced this when we were trying to like
Yeah.
schedule this. And I was like, no, I
Right.
just can't. I'm not ready yet. And like, and so it's, it takes a lot because you have to deal with like the self rejection that then comes up because you're like, I'm flaky or I'm this or I'm that. But like, really, it's just having really good fucking boundaries and being like, I
Sure.
refuse to do anything that isn't totally 100% pleasurable. And it starts with very mundane things in your everyday life. It starts with like, I'm not going to eat this thing because it doesn't make me feel good. It starts with like, I am going to say no to the kayaking trip that normally I would love, but I'm not feeling it right now. Or like, it's just those little things. And that's how we continuously orient toward our pleasure. And we also have to deal with a lot when we're doing that because we have to say no to a lot of things and people aren't used to that. And it takes a lot, to like deal with that kind of thing. And also just nervous system wise, like learning how to orient to pleasure, like in my body or in my environment. So one of the things I'll teach people before and after we do meditations or healing work, I'm like, look around your environment right now and just find something that feels really good for you, that just you want to, like maybe it's a pet, maybe it's a piece of art, maybe it's like I have a beautiful gold scarf hanging across from me right now, or whatever it is, right? And just orient to that and learning little tiny things like that to orient to. And then that turned into, for me, like ritual and retreat and creating like, if I work in a work day, I schedule like I'm doing embodiment work first, and then I'm doing intention setting about my business, and I'm lighting a candle and I'm praying to the goddess about my business. And I'm bringing this pleasure into this thing that's like, okay, now I got to sit down and write and do the thing, right? Like building pleasure breaks into that, or creativity breaks where every 2 hours, I'll stop and I'll do something like artsy or creative or, whatever it is.
That makes sense. I mean, it's the idea of pleasure based, thinking and action. It just sounds so common sense when you finally hear it. Now, though, that also coupled with empowering femininity, because I feel like on a stereotypical base from the outside looking in, if you see the stuff, it's just a lot of vagina talk, and it's just a lot of like this stuff that I feel like goes over most people's heads. Can you speak on being in tune with that kind of, it sounds stupid coming out of my mouth, but being in tune with yourself on that sort of level, like it within your body and the stuff that you're not supposed to talk about?
Yeah, yeah. I want to come back to that, but I want to touch on something that you said, like the pleasure-based, like leadership, pleasure-led leadership, like of your life sounds common sense, but it is hard. It
Sure.
took
Yeah.
me like 3 years to like really like be able to do that and be able to choose that, because there's so much conditioning
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
pulls us away from that. And that says you've got to be productive, you got to be striving, you got to be this. And so I just wanted to speak to that.
It's such a new concept too. I feel like I'm sure it's
Mhm.
existed for forever, but like at least in our society, in our brains, it's such a not foreign but new concept
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, it makes sense. But then applying it is a pain in the ass.
It really is. It's so hard to do, and you really have to deconstruct a lot of like conditioning and yeah, a lot to get there. Yeah. Okay, so what was the question I was supposed to be answering?
So, can you speak on just like, because I know you do a lot of feminine empowerment and things of that nature. And from the outside looking, it's just a lot of vagina and stuff talk. And I feel like it's easy to miss what's actually happening here because half of us can't relate. But also, like, just because you can't necessarily relate doesn't mean that there's not something to learn.
Yeah, definitely. So there's this whole concept in the feminine world of like decolonizing the body. So, over time, females have come to view their own body objectively and just as this like, oh, it's just to please you versus like, I can find pleasure. And I tell you what, as a man, if you're with a woman, you want her in a mindset of like, pleasure is for me, because then she's going to be using your cock for the pleasure for her a lot
Right.
more often. So
Guys
you
aren't
want to
smart.
keep
We don't
it
put
here.
that together.
So getting to know my body. So what's coming to mind is the first class that I took on sexological bodywork. They showed us our G spot and how to stimulate it and where it is and what female ejaculation is, and that it's like how to squirt and like how, like what the difference was. And like all of it was so mind blowing. Before that one class, that was my first class. Before that one class, sex had always been painful to me. But
Really?
after that, something
Yeah.
like switched in my brain, and sex has never been painful again after
That's
that.
amazing. Well, even
Yeah.
just in that one sentence of that first class, you said 3 things that most men would say are myths: G-spot, squirting. Most people are gonna be like, "That's not real."
Yeah. And so that is real. I teach it to women all the time and they love it. And they are super excited to find that. And their partners are excited that they found this. So there's so much in the de-armoring of that. Like, not every woman hears that in their first class and their mind just clicks
Sure.
into place and they go and they apply it. Right. And so we
Yeah.
spend time for some
It
of
sounds
the
like
women.
you personally were almost waiting to hear that, so it
Yeah.
kind of clicked right away for you.
Yeah. So many things made sense that I was like, yeah. But for other people, there's this de-armoring process and how to get there. So my classes and my events and my things are very gentle and very much like, okay, let's all turn off our cameras. Let me guide you through like how to touch this, how to use the mirror, how to find this, how to stimulate this. And let's practice with a wand. Let's practice with our fingers. Let's like get into de-armoring this part of our body that's been armored up because it's been objectified by ourselves and by other people, and because of all the conditioning around like what sex means and how it has to go and how it has to be, and how we're not allowed to prioritize our own pleasure or whatnot.
Yeah, it's insane how much we're still like just a bunch of Protestant Quakers.
Yeah, it's really, really sad and really wild. And yeah, it's some of the most rewarding work to see women and people like open up and see what happens and see the effects of this type of work, of women being able to access their physical pleasure
Yeah.
for the first time, a lot of them.
This has to be a tough thing also. I gotta think, stereotypically at least, is especially coming up like you do with any kind of sexual trauma. It kind of manifests itself one of two ways, right? You never want to be touched again, or you go the complete opposite direction and always want to be touched. But also within that, I would presume that there's some sort of body dysmorphia, right?
Yeah.
Like where you start looking at yourself even like objectively or just as an object because that's what somebody made you believe.
Yeah.
So that has to be another pain in the ass piece of it, is kind of trying to overcome that.
Yeah. It's interesting because I work with like dominatrices who are like in the profession, and they're out there and they're having lots of sex and like doing the thing. And then I work with people who are like have like vaginismus, where the vagina's like closing up, or like they can't touch their partner and they haven't had sex in 5 years or something. And like both of them need the same training though. They both need to slow down, make it sacred, come home to the body, open up and de-armor in no matter how much sex the dominatrix is having, she's likely doing it mechanically or fast, or right, like, and the G spot needs slow stimulation, and it takes 20-40 minutes to get there, and she didn't know that, and she like, so this bringing sacredness in is so important. And then what starts to happen is that body dysmorphia that you mentioned, it starts to melt away, and we start to come into this sacred relationship with our body and getting to know our body in a different way.
I'd be curious too about your opinion. So, you said you're in a monogamous relationship. I bet your husband's amazing. But based on kind of some of the things you said, have you ever explored, probably not because you've been together for so long, or would you be interested to explore a polyamorous relationship?
We have like gone there, talked about it, like, yeah, thought maybe that'd be a path for us. But really, ultimately, like people I have found, most people who are in those communities, like, are having a lot of drama and a hard time, and like don't have the mastery of communication and connection and intimacy that would be needed in that situation.
Yeah.
Would I find that situation and be consider, like maybe consider that? Then yeah, sure. But from my experience, it's not anywhere to be found.
It's tough because you can't bring in any ego to a
Right,
situation like that.
right.
It's not going to fly.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really have to have, and really, it's even that you have to have the ability to deal with the ego that gets brought into that.
Right.
And that's the
Yeah.
problem is like your ego's going to come into it. And can I face my own ego? Do I have that maturity? Do I have that education to be able to do that? And that takes a lot of like psychological education and emotional intelligence to be able to deal with it in yourself and then be able to meet other people where they are and their ego coming into it and have the maturity to do that and the skill level.
Do you think that this is something that you would do in front, like person to person, like one-on-one live instead of online?
Yeah, I definitely have considered that. I'm thinking about starting with like Reiki for women that maybe has some of this like sexological bodywork stuff. I have to be careful though, because I live in Illinois and sexological bodywork is considered prostitution.
Is that true?
Yeah, yeah.
Huh. So how do you do it at all?
I don't yet.
So, but like even online, you can't.
So, online, I just teach women how to touch their own bodies and how to
Okay.
do their own,
Right.
it's
So,
just
but there's a fine lines you're walking because of
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
silliness of Illinois.
Mhm.
Is that
Yeah.
something that's being worked on as far as evolving as a law, or
I think there are a lot of people trying to get like prostitution and sex work like legalized or decriminalized at least.
sure?
And I feel like they feel like they're making headway.
That's good. I do think it's weird that it's illegal to sell something that's not illegal to give away for free.
Right, right. Yeah.
I've always found that kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's interesting. I kind of straddle the fence on it because I think that so to me, there's sex work and there's prostitution. And to me, like most people who are in prostitution aren't there of their own volition, even though they're adults and they're consenting, that
Sure.
they're being coerced with drugs, coerced with money in ways that like, and I think of the prostitute to holy whore archetype. So the holy whore is in the temple and she is giving of her body not out of survival or I have to, but she's in sacred union with divine and giving of that energy and that essence. And the prostitute is still in survival mode and I'm doing this because I need to. And that to me is not voluntary or not consentful. And so it's really interesting. I like straddle the fence on like the decriminalization of it. Obviously, it would be good for, sex workers who
Yeah.
are doing therapeutic sex work to be able to do that. I think that that would benefit everyone. And also, I think that there's a lot of, I used to work in centers that actually rescued sex workers, women off of the streets and got them out of where they were. And they had to hide them in these houses out here and like hide them. And like, because their people would come after them and like hunt them down. And like, that's not safe. That's not
Yeah, that's
consent.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. I think I would all be all for decriminalization. I understand the difference between the two things you just said, sex worker and prostitution, but I think that they both should be legal and regulated and safe, and so that there's not somebody chasing these women and forcing them into this thing. But so imagine if you like, because I guarantee you some people are into it and they can make a lucrative business out of it, and they should be able to do that if that's what they want to.
Right.
And now one of the phrases you just said is holy whore.
Yeah.
Where does a phrase like this come from? And is it using the word whore feels like a reclamation of taking something potentially ugly and turning it into power. Is that what it's for?
Yeah. I don't know where this comes from. I just know that I have learned a lot from a lot of different women and females. One book that comes to mind is called Womb Awakening, and they talk about it in there. And it's an archetypal journey, really, that we're all on, whether you're a sex worker or not. Like you're learning how to make your yes and no sacred and not say yes to things that aren't for you and sell yourself in whatever ways. Like if you're showing up to do your job and you're only getting paid so much an hour, but you're worth more, you're like in the prostitute archetype energy, right? You're not in your holy whore energy. You're not in the and the sacredness of it. Like, yeah, I show up to my job and it fulfills me and it fulfills my bank account and it fulfills my family to be doing this. Like, right. And so like it's just this archetype of like, are you selling yourself? And you could be doing it in just like, oh, I said yes to my mom because she pressures me when I, it's like it's a archetype energy to be living by, not necessarily has to do with sex.
Right. I think that's kind of the thing too, is a lot of this stuff feels or can be written off as sexual things, but it's so much bigger than that. Even just the idea of the pleasure temple. It's when you're talking about even like the mundane and slowly trying to build up to these things, it's funny to think of like, oh yeah, that is literally pleasurable. It's just something you want to do versus something you have to.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's so hard to do that it requires a lot of support and a lot of training and a lot of like when I was building that for myself and doing all of that for myself, I had to like pay to be in all these classes and do all these things to like deprogram myself from not allowing myself to have pleasure and experience pleasure and access pleasure and make it a part of my regular day-to-day life was really, really hard for me, especially like coming from deep trauma very early on. It's like you adopt this like prostitute kind of energy, this like people pleaser, this kind of like, I am for you and you and you and you. I'm not for me, whether that's my boss or my, whoever I'm,
Right.
interacting with.
Yeah, our society always has somebody that you're supposed to be working for, right?
Yeah.
Which is a whole other annoyance.
Yeah.
Do you think that, so now I've lost my train of thought. There was something you mentioned earlier. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And I've completely brain farted it.
Well, while you're thinking of it, I will speak to
Great.
how I like started on this journey was like setting up these periods of ritual and retreat for myself where like I would have a week where I'd be like, I'm not doing anything, but I'm not going anywhere, but like I'm going to meditate in the morning, I'm going to do some breath work, I'm going to like make a lunch that feels really good for me, and I'm going to whatever. And then I started to like, and it was only during those weeks that I would do it, because then I would go back to like just grinding like I was grinding. And then eventually it was like slowly those things became like bigger and bigger parts of my life, and now it's been built as a lifestyle. And that's what the pleasure temple does, is like help women build that as a lifestyle. And everywhere that I post that I'm like, I only work with women, I also say I will train men on how to do this and how to train other men and how to do, like, I'm so open. Or any gendered person, I am happy to work with you and train you and then have you working with other people, because I think every gender needs this. I do. I just happen to, have an affinity for working with women.
Yeah, which is not an affinity, but also being smart.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Yeah, because I wonder if there's a world where realistically a man could teach women the same thing. Like, there's so many caveats of uncomfortability just thinking about that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
realistically, it's built to do that. Like,
Yes, yes. You know what? And I do think that in a lot of cases, having a man teach a woman how to would be more beneficial,
right,
because there would be this like integration. So a lot of the work that I do is this like finding our integration of our sacred masculine and our sacred feminine. So in a lot of us, just in general, our masculine energy is in over functioning. It's in that people
right.
pleasing, that grinding, that whatever, right? And so coming into right relationship with our masculine and feminine internally is really a big piece of the journey. And for me, it was the biggest piece of like my healing and being able to come into being a functional being with chronic illness, was healing my sacred masculine. And so there is something really potent and really powerful when a woman comes together with a male healer and is able to heal things, I think, especially sensually and sexually and erotically speaking as well.
I think about it in terms of myself because I can see I hate to say transaction of it, but I can see the benefits of learning that stuff without having any kind of extracurricular desire creep up. Just taking it like, I'm learning this information and it just happens to be about this stuff, but it doesn't mean like I'm gonna go out. Oh, I want to have sex with everybody, and I want to touch everybody's parts for forever. Because I don't have that desire in general in the first place. So like it's like anything. It's filling your toolbox, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like to think of it as like if you were going to get sexological body work or some kind of healing sexual work, it is like a medical type of, like mindset to me, like how I think of it. It's like that person across from you, like your doctor, you're naked on the table, your doctor's not like thinking sexually about
Yeah.
you. It's just,
Yeah.
hey, this is how we get to this
I've
place.
seen a lot of videos where they do.
Yeah, there's there are some fantasies. I mean, we can dream, right?
Yeah, but I do think that is awesome, and I think that that's something that like we already talked about. Just mental health in general is like slowly becoming more prevalent. I think this is something that's going to kind of be critical, and people don't realize it yet because it's still pretty taboo. Yeah, I mean, I can't. There's never going to come a day when we talk of if you say the word pussy, I'm like, but that doesn't mean I can't take it seriously. It just means I'm going to giggle first.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I think our society is going to realize more and more how important our sexual health is. And I think they are coming to. I think there's this like dawning happening right now. I think it's at the very beginning stages. Also, it's interesting because like the generations after us, like my son who's 18, 19, their generations are having much less sex than our generations are. And it comes from, Esther Perel talks about this. She's a sex therapist, a famous sex therapist. And she talks about how it comes from the disconnection of like being online and so much and like all of that. And I find that really fascinating and interesting. So I think,
That is interesting.
yeah, I think that like this pulling away from sex is actually going to cause people to be like, oh, wait a minute, we do need that. So I think that, to me, that's divine, way of like things got to get worse before they get better kind of thing. And like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of how history goes in a lot of different realms where it pulls apart like a rubber band and then it'll snap back together and then it'll be too much sex.
right. Yeah.
Be
That was
like,
probably the 80s. Yeah.
yeah, sex and drugs, that'll be good.
Yeah.
I think that's I mean that's good coverage. Is there anything you feel like we've left out of like the pleasure temple specifically?
No, that was really great. I think we touched on everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the work you're doing. I hope other people hear that, and I hope it at least triggers something in their brain. They're like, "Oh, I should at least check this out." I'm always jealous that like we just talk about how it's 100% accessible and smart for men to do it as well. But I always feel like so many of these things that I end up being part of are for the feminine in general, and I look like this, so it's kind of hard to break through. I mean, because you know me, I'm very
Yeah.
female energy,
Mm.
but I still look like this.
I think that you'd be a great sexological body worker, and I think you would have a lot of success if you wanted to go that route.
It's definitely got my interest peaked to at least learn more about it for sure.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that, you have a very safe energy. And I think that like women will pick up on that. And yeah, I think that would be very beneficial. We need much more men in this field. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how she goes. Are you guys still up in Woodstock?
We are.
Yeah. Are you 'cause you guys used to have are you the chiropractic business? Are you guys still doing that?
My husband, yeah, he's a chiropractor and I don't have anything to do with that anymore. I stepped out of that and started doing my own thing.
Nice. I bet that feels good though.
Yeah, it was really great. He actually like got to the point where he was doing so well that somebody came and bought his clinic and now he's like managing like 5 of their clinics and yeah, it's really,
That's even better.
yeah.
I'm amazed that people start businesses but like or become like individual independent contractors, but like I feel like I'd rather just run somebody else's than run my own bullshit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what he figured out.
What do you suppose is next then on this journey? Like, you're continuing to slowly but surely get your PhD?
Yes.
Is there more on the horizon? Do you see more of this kind of sexual work to learn, or do you see like just kind of incorporating your own thing from here on in?
I don't think I'll ever stop like training and getting
Yeah.
more education. Like I just love taking classes and training. So I do have like a sexological bodywork, like bigger training in mind. Like I took a very small, like thing that like now I'm like exploding and I'm like, man, I want to take like the bigger thing. So that would be really cool. I think that, right now I'm just launching the pleasure temple. So like I open my first cohort in September in a couple months or next month. And so it's a matter of like getting the first cohorts going and then making it something that people can purchase so that it's like,
Sure.
they can just purchase it online and they can do it themselves and they don't have to come into the one-on-one thing. So like
Right.
that transition is happening. And I think, yeah, in between that, I'm finishing my PhD and might do some sexological body work. And I
Still
want
having a family and
to,
doing all this
right.
stuff.
And yeah, all of that. Yeah. I want to do a lot more retreats and things too. So I think that that's, yeah, a big
Oh,
part.
now, so I love the idea of retreats. I think that they're awesome. Like
Mhm.
they're a big expense, but easily worth it. Like what
Oh,
you
yeah.
get out of it and what you can experience. What would a retreat then look like? Would you do just a female retreat, a couples retreat?
I'd be open to doing different retreats and it would have less of like like if it was a co-ed situation, it'd have less of the like physical and hands-on things. It'd have more of like the emotional, psychological de-armoring and like, getting in touch with what your relationship to your body is and how to think about your body different and experience it different and be more like, here's your assignment when you go back to your room this evening. Like,
Right.
practice that before you in the morning, before you come back to class, like practice this thing. Yeah.
Do you think you would do that? Like, I need you to do this act and
Mhm.
then come
Yeah.
tell me all about it.
Oh yeah, yeah. And when I give people like an assignment or things to do, it's like, okay, here's the three different levels at which you could do that, whether it's
Mhm.
just sensual touch, whether it's a little more sexual, or whether it's full on erotic. Like here are the levels. Go try that. Let's see where you're at and what happens. And it's different for you every day because you could give that same person the assignment on Tuesday and they're like, I just couldn't. You give it to them on Thursday, they're like, oh, I went all out. Like that
Right.
was great, like
Yeah,
because
yeah.
our bodies are different every day and what we want and need. And yeah.
Also, you just mentioned something interesting of three different levels, literally like just a sensual touch
Hmm.
and then a sexual act and then erotic.
Yeah.
Now, what are these? I feel like a lot of us would be like, are those not all the same thing?
So, like, if I'm leading a class, I'll have, to me, these are my whatever, how I
Yeah.
box them and how I package them. But, like, to me, it's like sensual is just of the senses. It's smelling something, it's
Right.
tasting, it's touching, right? Does have nothing to do with sex. Like,
Right.
sensual
It has
is
no
just
intention behind it. It just is.
right, right. Experiencing your senses. So that's part of the de-armoring phase. That's part of the like, okay, this is how I like get in tune with just like touching myself. So I'll lead people in like this like 5 minute like self-touching practice. That's just like I'm just like de-armoring my body to be able to experience sensation and increasing capacity for sensation. And my dominatrix needs that just as much as my person who hasn't had any sex in 5 years, right? And so there's that level of just the senses and sensual and getting into the body, and de-armoring. And then there's like bringing in some sexual and like but in a sacred way. So we do like vulva cupping, or like when I have males in my classes, because I do teach one where I do have some males, it's like genital cupping or perineum cupping, and like, just breathing there, just creating a little bit of sensation. And like, let's just be with that sensation and experience what that is, or rubbing the breasts, or right. And so like now we're engaging some of that sexual energy and it's sexual. And then erotic is like bringing it to orgasm and like really like, in penetration and, different things like that. To me, those are the three like levels that I work with and like let people kind of give themselves permission, like where am I
Yeah.
today on that
Right.
scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right. So it's kind of up to them to kind of explore
Mhm.
their level of comfort.
Yeah. Yeah. And we work with like learning how to give yourself consent, because a lot of times in society, especially for women, we're just like, we think like, oh, I'm with this guy or I'm with this person, I'm expected to do this. Or when he does this, then it means that I got to do it back. Or, right. And so, like, we play with like, what does the body want today? Let me ask it. Let me ask, like, is this vulva cupping okay? And let me feel into that before I just do it. And like retraining ourselves to know what consent even is or what that feels like. Because a lot of
Right.
times we think it's consent and we're saying yes. Then later we're like, oh, fuck, what did I do?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think honestly, I think we're all, not even just women, like probably worse, but we're all conditioned that we're supposed to do it no matter what all the time if
Right.
somebody wants to. Like, I was rewatching Scrubs recently, and the biggest complaint I have is how weird they are still that they get to have sex. Like everybody's so like childish about it. It's like, man, is that really what we're like? God, I hope not. It's
Right.
so stupid that it's still like in Hollywood they'll use it as like that kind of a joke. Or the joke is like, oh, once you're in a serious relationship or married, you don't have to have sex ever again. Like, wow,
Right.
that's so damaging. That's how we got to where we are in
Mhm.
society, because we've been dictated like that for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. I often have clients say to me, like, I'm just older. I mean, me and my husband don't have sex. And I'm like, I know a lot of men who are older, who are in their sexual peak and prime right now
Yeah.
and are having sex daily. So, like, that's
Yeah.
not a thing, you know?
I was gonna say women usually peak later in life, anyways.
Well, there's this whole like once you get past like when you're in perimenopause and menopause, you're kind of past like needing to do this like day to day, raise the kids, be there, you know,
Right.
like you're past that. And so now you can access more of your pleasure in a different kind of way for a different purpose now. So, yeah.
Is that what it is? That makes way more sense.
Mhm. Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah. Mhm.
That's got to be tough though, because like each generation kind of has kids at a different time. Like I feel like right now I have a lot of friends that are older that are having kids now, like in their early 40s, late 30s. That's which is wild because the other half of our generation had kids in high school.
All right. Yeah.
Oh, do you mind too? This is kind of a side note to what we've already talked about, but I just want to talk about because I find it fascinating. You've done surrogacy also.
I have. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
you only have the one son, right?
I have one son. Yeah.
But what kind of brought it around the surrogacy? Because you have to have a certain body type and be able to do this thing realistically. I have another
Mhm.
friend who did a couple as well. She's had like 2 or 3 kids. What kind of
Yeah.
brought that about?
We were in debt at like X amount of debt. And I like got this email one day and it was like, you know, sell your eggs. And I was like, I could sell my eggs maybe, like that'd be cool. So I was like looking on their website and I was like, what happens when you do this? Like just kind of like curious, like what, like people like my babies would be like out there in the world. Like, how does that even work? And then on their same website, they were like, be a surrogate for that X amount that you're in debt. And I was like,
Yeah.
ooh,
It pays.
okay.
It can pay. It's
Oh
different
yeah.
in every situation, but it can pay.
Oh yeah.
'Cause usually, stereotypically, they pay for all the hospital bills
Everything.
and everything like that, and then you also usually will get something on top of that.
Yeah, so it's like they pay for all of your expenses and you get in the tens of thousands of dollars to get paid for this. And so I was like, okay, like presenting it to my husband was very interesting. I was like, oh, what do you think about this? And at first he's like, no way. And I was like, come
Yeah,
on, like, you know, this could take care of our debt. And
I feel like it walks that line where
yeah,
it's really, really tough because it's not like go ahead and go out and get impregnated by somebody that,
right.
but it's kind of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And in Illinois, it's like, you know, illegal for you to be related to the child. So it's not your egg or whatever. There's all these like things you go through, and it's a
Yeah,
medical procedure. It's not like you're having
sure.
sex with somebody, you
Right.
know, to have
Yeah.
their baby or something. And, you know, so yeah, then we decided to do it. And it's been one of the best experiences of my life. She's actually 12 this year, I believe. And I actually see her every now and then. I'm going to see her in a couple weeks. And it's
That's
nice.
wild. I remember when you were pregnant.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But then you did that twice. Was that for the same couple?
I was going to do it a second time, but then I had some female issues that turned up that actually were maybe possibly caused by the in vitro the first time around. So they
Oh.
were like, yeah, you just take care of that and come back. And I was like, no, no, thanks. I'm good.
So how would you like? How do you kind of sell? Because one of the things I've always just like, even when we did the trauma recovery years ago, I my hardest time I've always had is selling the process because I believe in the process and I love the process and I think it definitely is beneficial and works. But I've always been adverse to kind of selling myself in that realm in general, even though I think it's worth it. How do you kind of sell this kind of a program that's I feel like so far ahead of its time and enough people aren't even thinking about what does that look like?
Yeah, you know what? I will tell you when I have figured it out. I'm still learning. And if you get any ideas, let me know. I think right now my focus around selling it is like focusing on the transformation that you can have, and specifically talking about my transformation, and like orienting to pleasure has like changed all of my entire life. Like I said, after one class, my sex has been different with my husband ever since, and it's been went from painful to like amazing, and only got better after that, taking more of the classes and learning the things. And also just the transformation that I experienced, and like, yes, I'm still just as sick as I ever was, but I'm functioning 20 times better than I ever have in my entire life. And like, even when I was like doing tons of trauma recovery work and all of this stuff, like, I'm functioning way, way better than now because of the practices that I do and have learned and teach.
So that's wild to hear, because I remember back when we were doing that, you had the fibromyalgia and the trauma recovery was helping that. So to hear that this is even like blowing it out of the water compared to them, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I think that both of them are necessary. And that's why, like, I still do incorporate some of, that work in with my clients, but it's like was a missing piece, I think, of like, that, but not just that. And like chasing healing and chasing manifestation, that to me is like that prostitute energy of like, you're selling yourself, you're still going after the thing outside of you. And this pleasure oriented work is all about like, let me bring it back to me, and I'm not chasing anything. I'm allowing myself to receive in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's huge. So where can we learn more?
Yeah, so the pleasuretemple.love is the website, and I'm on Facebook, Jenna Allin. I have a Pleasure Temple group just for women now. Kicked him out of there. Don't worry, he won't be there, lady.
Well, you invited me to it, and
I
then
did.
weeks later, we're like, nah.
Yeah, I did, because there were like creepos coming in, and I was like, I'm just gonna
When you made it, I was like, I don't know if she invited me because we know each other, but if it's open, this is gonna get bad quick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and yeah, so it was kind of sort of getting there. It wasn't getting bad, but it was just like, I can see where this is going. And I want to go in there and post some more content that is more like sensual, and I want to know that, as much as I can know. Yeah.
Awesome. I think that's good. I think that's a good place to stop too. Like I said, we could go on for hours. I know
Maybe
you
we can do it again.
maybe that would be awesome. But thank you so much for finding the time. The universe finally letting us be where we need to be.
Oh,
So we
yeah.
can
Thank
do
you
this.
so much. Appreciate it.
We end recording.